if it's unlawful. Enough people will come together. That's why we have class action suits. But three people holding up 300 million just because the Democrats can't have their way in every election. We ain't going to sleep. They can't stop us now. We gon' fight.
Everyone else in the country be forced to suffer under an illegal rule. But the majority basically said those landmark civil rights cases were wrongly decided on this specific procedural point, even if the underlying civil rights outcomes were correct. That's a stunning admission, because it suggests decades of civil rights litigation may have been built on constitutionally shaky ground.
Correct.
The dissent argues that this ruling creates a geographic lottery for justice. And as we're about to see, that's exactly what's happening. Within 48 hours of this ruling being published, the entire legal landscape shifted in ways most people haven't noticed yet. There are currently at least 47 active cases in federal courts, where states and advocacy groups are seeking these exact kinds of blanket injunctions. From immigration sweeps in Los Angeles to environmental regulations in the Rust Belt, the legal safety net has been pulled back. Attorneys general from 18 different...
They have held up progress with their green legislation through the courts.
States filed emergency motions in federal courts, either trying to preserve existing injunctions or arguing that previously blocked laws should now take effect immediately. Texas filed motions in 4 separate cases involving immigration enforcement, arguing that injunctions that currently block deportation policies nationwide should be limited to only the specific plaintiffs, which would allow ICE to resume full enforcement everywhere else. They are citing this decision to push forward with immigration policies that were
and he seemed to have a problem with it.
Previously blocked. Florida submitted emergency briefs in 3 cases involving social media regulations and election procedures, making the exact same argument. They are using it to bypass federal regulations on social media. California and New York countered with their own emergency filings, trying to preserve nationwide injunctions that...
That's how we weed out and make good law instead of this reaction from judges giving them too much power over the people.
Currently block various federal policies they oppose. But here's what's really happening behind the scenes. According to sources familiar with internal discussions, the Department of Justice held emergency strategy sessions with over 200 federal attorneys across 47 different cases to figure out how this changes their litigation approach. The White House counsel's office sent a confidential memo to all federal agencies warning them to prepare for laws they thought were blocked to suddenly start being enforced, potentially in a matter of weeks. The speed of the reaction tells you everything. Legal strategists view this as a massive win for the executive branch and a devastating blow to judicial resistance. And it's not just government lawyers who are panicking.
Judicial fiat. They are controlling. They are being the president. They are being the legislator. Go by the Constitution, not by your feelings.
Major advocacy organizations on both the left and the right are completely rewriting their litigation strategies. The ACLU has cases challenging immigration policies, surveillance programs, and criminal justice procedures, all of which relied on getting nationwide injunctions. The Alliance Defending Freedom has cases challenging LGBTQ protections, abortion access.
That's where we can come together. On the right, we don't want a police state. On the left, you shouldn't want a police state, but you only want to police others. You want to police, we want a lesser government, you want a total government.
And religious liberty issues with the same strategy. Both organizations just lost their most powerful weapon. What's even more significant is the economic response. Within 36 hours of the ruling, 3 major law firms sent client memos warning that civil rights litigation, environmental cases, and constitutional challenges...
Exactly. Take it back to court. Win on the merit of the case or struggle with it. Keep going. Have some real focus instead of storming churches and fighting ICE in the streets, running and hitting them with your vehicle.
Could now cost 5 to 8 times more than they did last week, because instead of filing one lawsuit in one friendly court,
he's using the language.
We see what it is.
And I like I said, I know I can't read his mind, can't read his heart, but he's using the language that I agree he's using that he shouldn't be using. They don't get to judge hunt. You find one weak socialist Marxist judge in Connecticut and you stop the whole flow across America. No.
Plaintiffs might need to file in 15 or 20 different jurisdictions to get similar protection. This is a litigation strategy revolution where only the wealthiest corporations can afford to defend their rights. But the question nobody's asking.
It gets to the point where locality rules.
Cutting up kids, parents ain't knowing.
If you want to murder your baby in this state or delete them, however,
when they go and learn,
TikTok can handle it.
Controlling your
You live there,
for bread,
but you can't just do everything all over the country.
And they boosting the rates.
We have
The numbers don't lie.
divided government for that reason. That's why you elect your sheriff. That's why you elect your mayor. That's why Minnesota, Minneapolis are anti-Trump, because that's what he voted for. Not every last one of them, but that's the majority owe that. But when they break the law, they got to deal with it. The Trump during his
Asking yet is this: if your constitutional rights can be protected in California but not in Texas, or vice versa, based purely on where someone happened to file a lawsuit, are we still one country under one constitution?
Yes.
The answer to that question determines what happens next with the policy areas that are about to explode. We are moving toward a boutique justice system where the law is a shield for the few and a sword against the many. Let's get specific about what this means for actual policies affecting real people, starting in...
What he's not telling you is when the Greenies file a lawsuit in Connecticut or Massachusetts, it affects the oil production or the tree cutting in Texas, Arizona, South Carolina. And that's why they have a lock on the system. The lock has been broken. Now, get out there, march peacefully, get out there, write your senators, get out there and vote. Get involved. But we're not allowing right now, under Trump 2.0, the federal judges to legislate for the whole country. One district judge telling 300 million people, I rule, not your president, not the Congress, not the Senate.
In the next 30 to 90 days, immigration enforcement is ground zero. Right now, there are 19 different nationwide injunctions, limiting various aspects of how ICE operates, covering everything from detentions.
19. They are going out there and filing frivolous lawsuits to stop ICE from moving the 10 to 20 million illegal immigrants, aliens from our shores. Don't know who they are. Don't know who they are. Hamas. Don't know they work for the Ayatollah. Don't know what the Venezuelans that are part of Trinidad or Agua. We don't know. But we can't know because of lawyers, maybe like him. They go out there and file lawsuits across the nation where they know they got a spineless judge who wants to rule in America and has the power that the Constitution did not give them.
Standards to asylum processing to deportation priorities to workplace raids. Under the new framework, those injunctions might only apply in the specific judicial districts where they were issued. Consider the birthright citizenship executive order at the heart of this case. Before this ruling, 3 different district courts in Washington, New Jersey, and California had blocked the order nationwide. They argued it was a blatant violation of the 14th Amendment. But because of this 6-3 shift, the Supreme Court has partially stayed those injunctions. The result? The executive order can now be enforced everywhere except against the specific plaintiffs in those cases. That means immigration enforcement could look completely different depending on which state you're in.
Why did Gavin Newsom take millions of dollars that should have went to his own citizens and put it in defense of illegal immigrants. Why? Because they vote, because they get an ID card, because they drive on our highways illegally. This is a shadow government that the left has created through the court system. It runs America. Finally, it has been shattered, and the left is losing their mind.
The Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security are already moving to enforce policies that were previously frozen.
Yes.
In California, a federal judge had previously barred roving patrols from questioning people based on their
California.
appearance or language, a practice civil rights groups call racial profiling, but the Supreme Court just issued an emergency order in Noem vs. Perdomo that overturned that block.
Exactly.
Now, ICE and Border Patrol have a green light to resume these patrols.
Yes.
ICE could potentially resume detention practices in Texas that are still blocked in California.
Yes.
Asylum rules could vary between the Ninth Circuit and the Fifth Circuit.
Yes.
Workplace enforcement could be aggressive in some regions and limited in others,
Yes.
all based on the geographic scope of various limited injunctions.
That's correct.
In Los Angeles, you might be protected if you are a member of a specific organization that's sued,
Yeah.
but your neighbor, born under the exact same circumstances, could be targeted.
Who is illegal that he won't bring out. Bring out the facts. Yes, you have to get involved. Instead of sending those thousands of dollars home, or just take the thousand and or 2 or 3,000 and leave. We need our housing back. We need our roads back. We need our welfare system back. To do that, we have to drain the swamp from Washington, D.C. to California to New York to Florida, Miami, Texas. We have to act. We only got a limited time with Trump. God knows who else we're going to get, how long this is going to happen. But yes, this is happening at the right time, hopefully for the right reason, and hopefully we can get some work done.
This creates a life and death scenario for thousands of families who are now living in a state of legal limbo, unsure if the protections they relied on yesterday still exist today. Gun rights represent another immediate flashpoint.
Yeah.
There are currently 8 nationwide preliminary injunctions blocking enforcement of firearm regulations in 6 different states, while those cases move through appeals. If those injunctions get narrowed to only protect the named plaintiffs, state officials could immediately start enforcing restrictions on everyone else.
Guess what? Then they get sued, and then they get sued again, and then they get sued again.
Second Amendment rights could literally change the moment you drive across a state border.
It does. Go to New York. Fly into New York.
Not because the law changed, but because the injunction protecting you from that law only applies in certain places. Healthcare access is equally affected, and this is where it gets really personal for millions of
healthcare access. Is he talking about abortion?
People. There are 14 active cases involving nationwide injunctions related to abortion medication.
See, that's the legalese that the lawyer that they use to camouflage what they're actually talking about. The deletion of unborn children. That is not health care. That is murder.
Gender affirming care, contraceptive coverage, and religious
gender affirming care. The mutilation of children. That is what he's talking about. They cannot. It's 1984. The Democrats have embraced 1984 like no other. You know, you can talk to George Bush 1 and George Bush 2. They was horrible. But the Democrats have just drunk the Kool-Aid to the point that is unreal.
Exemptions to healthcare mandates. We are already seeing this play out in cases like Trump versus Orr, which involves LGBTQ rights and gender designations on passports. The Supreme Court recently...
Look, dude, it's male or female.
Pearls and lobes of pride.
You don't get any other. You can't get no more clearer. There's only male and female. Get with the program. No, the government should not be playing politics with the passport. What was you going? Cut yourself up all you want to. Call yourself Nancy. However, you're still going to die, a male or female. If body parts do not designate who you are, how does removing body parts designate who you are? Semantics. They're running in circles. If a person cuts up themselves to be a she, he's born a he. Because he feels like he's a she inside. He has a mental, and she has a mental condition, male or female.
They ruled in favor of the administration, allowing the State Department to refuse gender-neutral markers for anyone not part of a specific certified class of plaintiffs. Medication that's available through telehealth in states covered by certain injunctions might become inaccessible in states outside those jurisdictions. Healthcare providers could face prosecution in one state for services that are protected by injunctions in neighboring
He's talking about abortion.
states. If the federal government
He's talking about sending drugs across state lines. Just because California and these spineless counties and states have no foundation on truth, that does not mean that we have to suffer for it. Yes, if you ship these pills that terminate children to Texas or Florida or Arizona or wherever state that is outlawed, yes, you will be held accountable. So you won't be able to buy that yacht or that extra room on your mansion.
decides to stop funding certain types of medical care, as they did in Skirmeti, an injunction might protect families in Tennessee who sued, but leave families in 25 other states with the exact same healthcare needs completely exposed.
Healthcare needs, abortion.
Environmental regulations are similarly tangled. The EPA is currently operating under multiple nationwide injunctions blocking clean water rules, air quality standards, and climate-related regulations. If those injunctions become geographically limited, environmental protection could become a patchwork where federal standards apply in some regions but not others.
Yeah, because certain standards won't apply for that region. But you try to cookie code it and apply everything, and it's not working. So yeah, both sides gonna have to do better work.
Creating a nightmare for companies trying to comply and communities trying to protect their health. Employment law is about to get incredibly complicated. There are nationwide injunctions affecting overtime rules, workplace safety standards, contractor classifications, and anti-discrimination protections.
That's why you go into and you push from the county to the president. You have to get out there and be involved. You can tell me who plays on your high school football team. You might know every time Tom Brady threw a pass and hit everything, but you cannot get the time to go and look for your rights. Well, it's your problem. You're going to lose some rights. You're right or left. Are you conservative or communist? I don't care.
They say it's all about
control, do your part. Do it now.
If those protections only apply in certain circuits, employers with operations in multiple states could face completely different federal requirements.
Hopefully, it breaks up some of these big mega corporations so we can go more local and have more emphasis on what is happening in our state and in our city, where the Walmarts of the world that destroyed the family businesses and dump Chinese junk in America, it's changed with the GMOs and the other poisoning of the food, processed foods.
Requirements depending on location. Federal employees can be fired in mass Schedule F reclassifications because the courts can no longer issue a nationwide stay. So here's what you need to understand. Federal law isn't changing, but whether that federal law gets enforced against you depends on where you live and whether that location falls within the geographic scope of whatever limited injunctions might exist. We're potentially creating 50 different versions of federal law, all technically the same on paper.
No, it's stopping you all from judge shopping and getting what you want. Getting some weak knee judge in a Marxist county to come up and control all of us. We don't want what y'all have in Connecticut or Maine or LA. We want what is best for us, and we will decide.
But enforced completely differently in practice. And that brings us to the issue that's going to cause the most chaos in the next 12 months. This ruling just created a potential constitutional disaster for election administration, and the timing could not be worse. We're heading into a presidential election cycle, and right now there are 11 nationwide injunctions affecting various aspects of how...
Now, elections. They told us that illegal immigrants was not getting federal funding. That was a lie. They gave illegals, undocumented people, ID cards, and then they made laws in California and other places that you did not have to, and it was against the law to even ask for identification. You don't know who's voting. You assuming everybody is going to be truthful. They're setting it up so that the communists could win. So this is a milestone for us. Would it cause some friction? Absolutely. That's life. Everything is not ice cream and cookies. Get out there, do your own job.
Elections are conducted in 22 different states. These injunctions cover voter ID requirements, mail-in ballot procedures, early voting periods, voter registration deadlines, absentee ballot rules, and voting roll maintenance. Under the old system, one nationwide injunction could block a state law from being enforced.
Some guy up there again in Washington State can tell the rest of the country, no, we're not doing it this way. No.
A man in a truck.
ADL, whatever their name is, and all the rest of the NAACP and all the rest of them, they're going to have to get out there and do the work. And they'll find out they're not the majority. They control the majority to the minority of federal judges. It has been broken. The rule of the minority has been broken in the court system. Hallelujah.
Anywhere in that state. Under the new framework from this Supreme Court ruling, that same injunction might only protect voters in the specific counties where the plaintiffs live. Think about what that means practically. The same state
election means that you need to get out there. If you want something done in your county, get together with your neighbor. Have a sensible conversation. Get together. Grassroots movements like MAGA and like the Tea Party and push for what you want instead of going to some supreme judge who is being skimming money and back paid and all kinds of stuff allegedly that happened with the judges in some of the cases with Trump. So what I'm saying is you're going to have to do the grown-up work now instead of legislating through judges, federal judges.
Law could be enforced in 75% of a state's counties while being blocked in the other 25%, based purely on where lawsuits were filed. We are already seeing the first signs of a disaster. In December 2025, the Supreme Court issued an emergency stay in Blanche versus Perlmutter, allowing Texas to use a contested congressional map that a lower court had found to be discriminatory. Under the old rules, if a court found a voting map or a mail-in ballot procedure to be unconstitutional, they could stop it statewide. Under the CASA framework, we could see a reality where a voting law is blocked in one county but enforced in the next. Election administrators would need to print different ballots, train poll workers on different rules, and set up different procedures for different parts of the same state, all while trying to maintain public confidence in election integrity. The National Association of Secretaries of State issued a statement.
They do not care about voting integrity. If they would, they would fight for the Democrats, the liberals, the Marxists would fight for voter ID. Because they don't fight for voter ID. It's not integrity, it's voter corruption. Again, the rule of the judicial tyranny of the minority has been broken. The Supreme Court broke their back. Will there be problems? Yes. That's why we got to fight through it. Bush won in the Supreme Court in Florida when Al Gore, thank God, Mr. Climate Change, lost. That is how it is. And the thing is, they wanted to keep voting, and they had voting irregularities all down in Dade County and other places in Florida. So yes, time to stop some of this fake voting. Make it have IDs. What it's going to, I don't mind for a 2-week voting period for especially all these old people like myself in Florida. But it's mail-in ballots. There's going to old folks' homes and they are unconscious, and you putting their name down and vote for this person, vote for no. It should be a before a voting official to sign an affidavit. The person was there and of sound mind.
Calling this an operational nightmare. How do you conduct a fair election when the rules literally change depending on which county you're voting in? Not because of different laws, but because of the geographic limits of different injunctions. And here's what makes this politically explosive. Both parties have used nationwide injunctions extensively to challenge election laws. Between 2020 and 2024, conservative groups obtained 9 nationwide injunctions blocking various election procedures they opposed, while progressive organizations secured 13 such injunctions during the same period.
9 to 13. Hello?
Both sides just lost that weapon simultaneously.
That's right.
The result could be the most legally chaotic election season in
It opens us up for 2026 that in this election year, you're going to have to get out, mobilize, and like Trump did, have those lawyers standing by because it's shenanigans that the socialist Marxist left is going to do.
Modern American history, with different rules in different places, constant emergency litigation, and no clear path to uniform national standards. While everyone's focused on the political implications, corporate America is quietly having a meltdown over this decision, and the economic consequences could be staggering. Companies that operate across multiple states are suddenly facing the prospect of navigating dozens of different regulatory environments where federal rules might be enforced.
That is because these mega companies are not always what's good for commerce. Many times they need to be broke up. So this is a possibility of seeing a shift in that. Think locally, act locally.
In some locations, but blocked by limited injunctions in others.
Yeah.
While the human toll is staggering, corporate America is dealing with a different kind of life and death implication, the survival of the national marketplace. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce released an analysis estimating that compliance costs for multi-state businesses could increase by $53 billion annually.
So what that means, they need to diversify. They need to break up. Investors can invest across state, but these mega corporations, they undercut real local business owners, usurp the market and then take away the billions. Whereas now, if you break them up, instead of having one, you have 1,000 different companies and 1,000 different ways for the common man and woman to make a living. Instead of you got these big companies that gobble up everything and then hand out pennies to their workers with no health care, no dental care, no retirement.
Annually, if they need to maintain different operational standards in different jurisdictions. Banking and financial services are particularly affected. There are currently 4 nationwide injunctions blocking federal regulations on cryptocurrency exchanges, lending standards, overdraft fees, and consumer data protection.
And each state should be able to sign their own. Again, you're missing the point of what a republic is.
Imagine you are a multi-state bank or a pharmaceutical company.
Care.
For decades, if the government issued a rule that was unconstitutional or illegal, you could get a single injunction that stopped.
No, it didn't. It wasn't necessary. It was in question. It may not been illegal on face value, but because of a tyrannical, liberal, or conservative judge, they made their ruling and stopped the whole shebang. So now, get back to business, break up this monopoly, and let's get to work.
That rule across all your offices. Now that is gone. You could be forced to follow one set of data privacy rules in the Ninth Circuit on the West Coast,
Yes.
while those same rules are blocked in the Fifth Circuit in Texas and the South. If those injunctions become geographically limited, banks might need to operate under different federal rules in different states. Technology companies face similar chaos around content moderation requirements, data privacy rules, and antitrust enforcement.
Yes.
A tech company could be required to follow certain federal regulations in states not covered by injunctions while being.
They should be. Certain states want, just like in Florida, ID for 16 years old or above. That's why Pornhub supposedly left Florida. I have no problem with that. So just because it's not as smooth as you would like, the tyranny has been broken up. Does it solve one problem, create 1,000 more? That's how life works.
Exempt from those same regulations in states where limited injunctions apply. Healthcare providers and insurance companies are staring at potential disaster around coverage mandates, prescription drug pricing, and telehealth regulations that could vary based on geography rather than being uniform nationwide.
Good.
The pharmaceutical industry is especially concerned.
Good.
There are 6 current injunctions blocking various FDA enforcement actions related to drug approvals, safety monitoring, and marketing restrictions. If those injunctions only protect companies in specific circuits,
Yes.
a pharmaceutical company could face federal enforcement in some states
Yes.
while being protected in others for the exact same conduct.
I have no problem.
Employment lawyers are already advising corporate clients to prepare for different workplace regulations, wage requirements, and discrimination standards depending.
Because they're spread out over the whole nation. And again, they're doing less for people and not more. Local companies, compared to these corporations, where the top is making $500 million a year and the bottom half is making $15 an hour. But when you break them up, competition from the big monster mega corporation into these little entities, the competition drives where the little man can make a decent living again.
On where each facility is located. A company with offices in 15 states might need to comply with 15 different versions of federal employment law based on which locations fall within the scope of various limited injunctions. The compliance costs alone are estimated to hit $47 billion annually. Major law firms are already telling their clients to prepare for litigation warfare. What's particularly frustrating for businesses is the uncertainty factor. Nobody knows which existing injunctions will survive under the new standard until lower courts revisit each case individually, which could take months or
which they should. It should have happened in the first place for the last 25 years. But now, this is disruption. This is what I voted for. This is the Trump disruption. This generation cannot buy a home. This generation has tons of debt on education They have paper, but no intelligence. So this is another brick in the wall. This is another smash of the window where those that are seeking to better themselves can. A one panel judge cannot control us all now. You have to fight it out. And it's come to a better agreement. And it goes up to it's going to go back up to the Supreme Court. And you're going to have to come out fighting.
Years, companies are being forced to make compliance decisions worth millions of dollars without knowing what the legal landscape will look like 90 days from now. But there is a bigger story hiding in the background. This isn't just about injunctions, it's about who actually runs the country. What we are witnessing is more than just a change in legal.
He said it. Who actually runs the country? This is the whole problem. I like the guy. Again, he seems to lean to the left, but I like the guy. He's saying the silent part out. Who runs the country? We voted for a president, not for their appointed judge. To tell the president, no, you can't do what the people told you. And it's not the Constitution, yes. The president has to act within the Constitution. The Congress has to act within the Constitution. That's where you can fight them out legally. But one district judge should not rule the roost for the rest of us across the world, across the nation.
Procedure. It is a fundamental shift in how the Supreme Court asserts its authority. Legal scholars call it the shadow docket, the court's emergency docket, where high-stakes decisions are made without the traditional months of briefing, oral arguments, or lengthy signed opinions. In 2025 alone, the Supreme Court has ruled in favor of the administration in roughly 67% of substantive emergency applications. By issuing the ruling in Trump versus Casa Inc. through this expedited process, the court sent a message to the entire federal judiciary. The era of lower courts checking executive power is over. This represents a Supreme Court power play that micromanages the lower courts in ways that were unthinkable.
He used the term micromanager. Again, all the thing I can say, he leans to the left. He's okay with the lower courts micromanaging the administration, but he don't want the Supreme Court to micromanage the lower courts. Just trust the answers are he wants. They're in the questions you've restrained. I can only say his buddies in the left to continue to have that power. And if the Democrats get there and they can stack the Supreme Court, make it 11 and throw their people in there. But each year that Trump is in office, he's putting in more and more federal judges, hopefully more constitutionalists and less radical like these communist Marxists that we have now. So, yes, who runs the country? That he said.
A decade ago, Justice Jackson, in a blistering dissent on the shadow docket, noted that the court is cavalierly picking winners.
Cavalierly. Justice Jackson cannot tell you what is a male and female. She's married to a white guy, but she always seemed to be a grifter with this racism. Apparently, she had children, but she can't. She can't tell you what a woman is. A woman has a child, can have a child. Man cannot. Man can provide the seed, but she can't understand that. And she sits on the Supreme Court. Yeah. To me, he's leaning to the left. He's very articulate. He's very well spoken, better than I am. However, clear. Who rules the roost now? Supreme Court, not the lower court. Not the lower court telling the president what he can and cannot do, when it's constitutionally okay. It doesn't meet the district court's will to rule, power to rule. It breaks it up, yes.
Winners and losers in cases that haven't even been fully litigated yet. The most explosive aspect of this shift is how the court is using emergency orders to effectively overrule long-standing law without actual.
Why are they doing that? Because the lower courts are making decisions before it has been litigated, siding with the left. And either Trump was going to, thank God he did not, with the left try to push him into, totally disregarded the now the seeds that we planted rulings. He stayed tough and he pushed it up, kept fighting up to the Supreme Court, and now he's winning 67%. You said it.
Saying so. In Trump versus Wilcox, the court used the shadow docket to allow the firing of independent agency officials, ignoring the landmark 1935 case, Humphrey's Executor, which protected those officials from political removal.
Yeah.
Justice Kagan warned that this allows the president to overrule.
When they defy the presidential order, the will of the people, it's time for them to go. They got so much that they can do. The administrative state has to be brought into order, brought under the heel of the president.
Precedent by fiat. When the Supreme Court uses a one-page emergency order to tell a lower court judge they were wrong, it leaves other judges in a state of paralysis. They no longer have a roadmap of legal reasoning to follow. Instead, they are forced to
They was coming up with their own novel ideas anyway.
Guess at the Supreme Court's will. This creates a judicial chilling effect, where lower courts become hesitant to block even the most blatantly unconstitutional executive actions for fear of a swift, unexplained reversal from above. This reassertion of authority hits the hardest when it comes to civil rights. For over 60 years, broad injunctions were the primary tool used to enforce desegregation.
They went out of the color of the law. They went outside the letter of the law, and they did what they want. Okay, affirmative action, it had its place. That's what you don't understand. Okay, you went outside the letter of the law, the color of the law. You did what you wanted to do that you felt was good. That lasted just so long. Now it's time to come back to reality. Now it's time to get back within the Constitution. Not looking to see what Germany is doing. Not looking to see what Switzerland is doing. No. What did the founding fathers say? All right. If you can't amend the Constitution, you're going to have to work within the law. This is not a free fall. The nation is in crumbling because we're so divided. But we're so divided because we're so uneducated and indoctrinated. But that's another thing.
Disability access under the ADA and voting rights. By insisting that relief must be limited to the named plaintiffs, the Supreme Court has made it nearly impossible to solve systemic discrimination. If a state passes a law that suppresses the vote of a minority group, a judge can now only protect the specific 10 people who sued. The other 100,000.
That's when you get a class action. You're leaving out half this. You're only litigating your portion of the case. You get a class action. You get thousands to sign up. But you're not saying that because you don't want the people to know that, in my opinion, my humble opinion.
People in that same community, they are left unprotected unless they file their own lawsuits. This turns the pursuit of justice into a war of attrition. Civil rights organizations like the NAACP and the American Immigration Council are sounding the alarm that this ruling could set.
American Immigration Council does not want the removal of illegal aliens from the shores of America. The NAACP has been taken over by the Marxists and BLM and the rest of them. So I don't care what they think. They're not civil rights. They're disgusting, and they are the cancer in America that's ruining for the rest of it. But now they got to get out there and actually do their job. But they're gonna stay to the core of their being, which are grifters, race hustlers.
Progress backed by decades, requiring thousands of individual court battles to achieve what one used to accomplish.
Yes.
Justice Jackson called
Justice Jackson is
this an existential threat to the rule of law, arguing that it creates zones where the executive branch can effectively opt out of the Constitution for anyone who hasn't already sued. This Supreme Court ruling fundamentally changes how federal power operates in America, and we're only beginning to see the consequences unfold. As we look toward the 2026 election and beyond, the millions impacted are not just a statistic, they are the American public. We are now living in a country where immigration agents can resume racial profiling practices in specific cities because the universal block was lifted, where federal employees can be fired in mass reclassifications because the courts can no longer issue a nationwide stay, where small businesses face a $47 billion regulatory nightmare of
now he says small businesses. If you're in a small business, you're in a region. But if the left and their big business, their multi-corporations, international corporations, stretching from shore to shore, yes, they're going to have a problem. That's when you're going to have to file and learn locally, and you're going to have to adapt or break up the company.
Freeing rules across state lines. The Supreme Court's 6-3 ruling in Casa, Incors, hasn't just changed a rule. It has changed the very definition of what it means to have a right in America. If your right to free speech, to vote, or to equal protection only exists if you have the money to sue for it personally, then those aren't rights, they are privileges. Whether this represents a return to constitutional principles or a dangerous fragmentation of legal protection depends entirely on your perspective. But either way, the legal landscape just shifted beneath our feet in ways that will affect immigration, healthcare, elections, civil rights, and business operations for years to come. We are entering a new era of American law. Whether you see this as a necessary return to the Constitution's original intent or as a dangerous expansion of executive power, one thing is certain, the legal...
So, the expansion of judicial power, because you're a lawyer, didn't bother you. But the expansion, so to speak, of presidential power, the check and the balance is those 400 people in Congress and those 100 people in the Senate. So those thousands of little demons spread out all over America, calling themselves district judges, lost their power to rule, and to the rule of the minority has stopped. It's been stymied. And I'm happy for America.
Patchwork is here to stay. Is this the monumental victory for the separation of powers that the president claims, or is it an existential threat to the rule of law, as Justice Jackson warns? The answer will be written in the courtrooms of 2026. If you want to stay ahead of major Supreme Court developments like this, make sure you're subscribed, hit the like button, and drop a...
He makes me mad, but he does a deep dive into it because he's a lawyer, where I couldn't, and I haven't even tried. But he's worth looking into, though he boils my blood.
Comment with your thoughts on how this ruling will impact you. Do you think one judge should have the power to stop a law for the whole country?
No.
Or was the Supreme Court right to end nationwide injunctions?
Yes.
Don't forget to subscribe for our deep dive next week on the Department of Government Efficiency.
Another thing he's missing on this. He's not bringing into it. It's hard to bring in everything. I understand. However, nevertheless, they was calling for impeachment of these judges for the very acts that the Supreme Court finally had to, hey, Mr. President, give me some time. And here it is from January 2025 to January 2026. We get the results instead of the usurpation of the law from presidential power. We get the results that we've been acting. The lower courts have been put in their place by the Supreme Court. He says micromanage, but if they don't micromanage the lower courts, the the Senate or the House will, or the executive branch will show the judicial branch you have no army, you have no fund. So, yes, I agree with what was done. I'm giving a thumbs up and I'm a subscribe.
And how this ruling is clearing the way for a total overhaul of the federal workforce.
He gave me a workout. So that's it for tonight. I appreciate. Please like, share, leave a comment, visit his website, and let's keep the fight going. All right, thanks everyone.